Welcome to NFL Daily, where we continue to make marquee additions. We don't even put our marquee additions on the practice squad like they did with Dalvin Cook in Dallas. We're adding members to the NFL Daily family, and that includes Keegan Abdoo today from Next Gen Stats.
Right
also
on.
got Steve Wyche and Jourdan Rodrigue here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio. And yeah, Keegan, you work here for Next Gen Stats, and you still had no idea where the podcast studio was. I took that as an insult.
You know, we're just very siloed at the NFL. You know, you work within your department, and if you cross over, you might get reprimanded. So
I was excited. Look, Keegan, I met him at a get-together at the Super Bowl with Nate Tice and a lot of movers and shakers at the Super Bowl. I was like, this guy's in our building. He's a secret weapon. A great follow on Twitter, and we've been talking about NFL Pro and Next Gen Stats and everything that they have.
Awesome.
So he can bring that angle to the conversation today. It's an NFC preview, your favorite conference, Jourdan, fresh off the Rams practice field.
Fresh being the key word this week off the practice field. Were you aware that you almost hit Keegan in the face like 4 times?
My hands fly around. What happened? Steve, good to have you back here.
Good having you. I'm an NFC guy too. You know, growing up between Minneapolis and St. Louis, you know, grew up loving the NFC back when it was on CBS, I believe, exclusively. Long days ago.
And then once, were you ever you were based in St. Louis? Were you ever as a professionally? Or no?
No. Hell,
Okay.
Once I left University of Missouri, I was gone. That city was in my rear view mirror. I love the Cardinals, and that's about it.
So we hit the AFC on Thursday with Nick Wright. That was a lot of fun. We're going to go through same questions essentially as the NFC and go through them all today, hit every team. We're all going to predict our seeds. Keegan's predictions hold a little more weight because they have so many numbers behind them, but we all get to make our predictions. But we do have some news, so I want to fly through the news quickly before we get to the NFC preview. I mean, it's just like we've been talking about these quarterback battles all offseason. Now that they're officially over, we should at least mention it. Jourdan, let's talk Patriots. Jacoby Brissett officially over Drake May. I actually thought this was up in the air the last day. My conspiracy theory is Jourdan Mayo might have been more on the fence or leaning Drake May than maybe his offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, who made it very clear he wanted Jacoby Brissett. But they did end up going with Jacoby. And Mayo said in a radio interview on Wednesday, actually, that the right guy for us now might not be the right guy for us down the road. With telegraphed it a little bit. It makes me think he's got a pretty short leash.
Yeah, obvious. I mean, they're trying to be safe with the guy that they're developing to be their next franchise quarterback. And I think in that same interview, he didn't he say Jacoby had outplayed Drake May?
No, he said Drake May had outplayed Jacoby earlier this week. It's all very confusing. That's the thing. So, as a Patriots fan,
you're just not trying to rush. And I know you really want to finish that sentence as a Patriots fan, Greg, but you're not trying to rush the guy into making too many mistakes, getting a little ghosts early, anything like that could potentially happen to set him off trajectory. You're trying to develop him. You want your starting quarterback, who's going to be your starter eventually, to play. You want him to get reps, but you also want to protect him sometimes from himself and sometimes from the environment around him.
Any thought, Steve, that Mayo stepped in it a little because he said all along it's not about Drake May showing that he's ready. It's about who wins the competition. And that's where I think he got in trouble because the last few weeks, everyone there, including Jourdan Mayo, say Drake May outplayed Jacoby Brissett. That I think Jacoby, and it's a tough situation he's in, wasn't playing his best either because of all the pressure and everything that's going on. And May can make some plays and look more comfortable. And by all accounts, kind of outplayed him in the preseason and in practice.
Yeah, look, I think this comes back because remember, I'm on the record on this show as saying that Drake May should start.
Me too.
But I think they looked at the schedule and it's like, geez, this is really, really no joke. But you're going to have to be thrown into it at some point. But I think they also looked at the rest of the roster and like, we really want. I don't know. I'm a big believer in letting him play. You know, when you talk about Alex Van Pelt having some sway, he had Jacoby in Cleveland as well.
Yep.
So there's that relationship and that familiarity and how he can deal with in-game situations that Drake May has not seen in the regular season. That may be why he's slowing it down.
Over under Drake May starts, Keegan, this year.
I'm going to go 10.
Okay.
Ooh, that's the over-under line?
I mean, he's saying, yeah, Drake. I would go like 14 or 15. I think this is quick.
Yeah.
I think it's like let Drake May see what the regular season is like. It's probably not going to go that well, and that they'll be impatient. Like, what was your view on May as a prospect coming in?
I really liked him as a prospect. I thought that honestly, the Daniels pick was a little bit questionable to me compared to May's tools. So I thought he was the second best quarterback in this draft, and I really wanted my Giants to go up and grab him.
They tried, it
There
sounds
was
like.
that rumor that was happening. Unfortunately, the Patriots, as a Giants fan, seem to have maybe gotten another franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think they will, and that's why I think Patriots fans should just relax. Like, calm down. It's so hard to get a quarterback. Just believe that this is going to be your guy. You're not going to win many games this year. Enjoy it. What are you
Wait.
talking about?
He said Patriots fans relax.
Yeah.
That's the biggest.
Do you want to address him now?
I mean, that is the biggest when pigs fly thing.
Okay.
Patriots fans can't relax. You've been up
Well, they
there.
should.
I
Yeah,
do
good
want to
luck.
just say one thing on make one thing really clear. What I'm not going to do in Jourdan Mayo's first year is get on him for flip-flopping on something this is also a building that never said anything to about anything for years and years and years. Jourdan Mayo being a first year, he is allowed to A, change his mind, B, receive more information, C, consult his coaching staff, D, talk to the media and change his mind. He's allowed to develop. Like I'm not going to hold him for what he said last Wednesday and change his mind this Wednesday, especially if they're developing a plan for this guy along the way.
That's why I like Jourdan. She takes a step back. She's empathetic. She sees the big picture. You're right.
I have a lot of feelings.
I kind of like that Mayo says whatever is on his mind. It
Which
is
I
a
love.
beautiful thing.
He's a tough guy. He's a former player. They love him. I just want Jourdan to go on the steps of the City Hall in Providence, Rhode Island, or someplace, and say this to the people who are kindly known as mass because they are not going to be as forgiving as
No,
I'm too
but you know
soft
what?
for that.
It's a miserable way to live because the Celtics are the team that has my heart the most now, where I'm up and down. And you know what I saw all last season was thousands and thousands of people who were miserable during a championship season. Like, enjoy the ride. This is going to be a fun ride with Drake May. Just enjoy the process. All right, the process in Pittsburgh seems less enjoyable. I thought it was really interesting. After they announced Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback, which we expected, Justin Fields, Keegan didn't seem like he did enough to win the job, in my opinion. He just didn't play that well in the preseason. I actually think the door was open. They opened it for him, and he struggled too, and it's a tough situation. I thought it was interesting, though, on the Rich Eisen show that Mike Tomlin immediately threw it out there that Justin Fields is too talented to just keep on the bench, that my friend Raheem Morris, in his words, should be ready for some Justin Fields. And maybe that's gamesmanship, but I do believe him that Justin Fields will have some role in this Steelers offense in the first month of the season.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Also, just both quarterbacks are such a weird fit with Arthur Smith. He loves to get those wide open throws over the middle using play action. Both of those guys are not really in structure quarterbacks, so that'll be interesting to see how either of them kind of fit in that offense.
Yeah, we talked about it. It's like everyone was popping a tiny mini bottle of champagne every time they saw a throw between the numbers because they knew that this is what was going to be a key element of Arthur Smith's offense. What I really hoped to see, which never quite manifested, yeah, it was a preseason, but just didn't really manifest, was the ability of Justin Fields to be used in a multiplicity kind of way within Arthur Smith's sort of reputation among some as a run game guy and able to marry the run and the pass in that way. And we just,
You'll probably see it.
The door was open and he just
saw
didn't
something
quite walk
in the
through.
third preseason game, which I thought was interesting because Russell Wilson comes out, leads a touchdown drive, and he's out. So I was in studio working with Ron Rivera. He's like, Russell's a starter.
Yeah.
You don't just go ahead and play him one series and take him out if he's earning the job. He's the starter. But then when they put in Justin Fields, they did some RPO stuff. They did some stuff almost like some old school veer option type of stuff. So I think that's going to be part of it. It's just interesting because, again, when I see the Falcons preseason games, he had a chance to draft Justin Fields and wanted no part of him.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's a huge...
And to that point, though, Steve, I did like seeing that as well. It's just I don't think that enough of it popped for them in order for him to fully walk through the door.
Well, and
like
they were,
Greg said.
they're bracing on practice too, and the offensive line. I honestly think they just felt like, unless Fields played excellent, not that they felt like they owed it to Russell Wilson, but this was the vision, this was the plan all along, and it was going to take something different to veer off. I do worry, though. We have our predictions up on NFL.com if you want to check it out. Keegan's are in there. I don't know if Steve filled out the email this year. He's kind of big time.
I didn't get one.
I'm sure you got
I did
one.
not
man.
get one, my
Okay.
friend.
And
He's checking right now.
out of 30 analysts, only one even had the Steelers in the playoffs. And like I think we did the opposite of what we did last year, where we overrated the Steelers because they had a nice preseason. Maybe we were overreacting to a bad preseason. They're still the Steelers, and they have a great front seven. Quickly, I just want to go through the wide receiver drama before we get to the NFC preview. Surprisingly, Jamar Chase and Brandon Aiyuk, that it's taken new turns, that Jamar Chase was back practicing, then he wasn't, after Zach Taylor expected him to be all systems go and said he was confident Jamar Chase was going to be playing week 1. I wonder if those comments had something to do with him not showing back up at practice on Wednesday. He was kind of there on Thursday. You're shaking your head. Yes, Steve Wyche.
Well, I think that very much was like, oh, no. Oh, you think I'm going to practice? Why should I? Oh, I'm under contract? Yeah, but, I want to get paid. And I think those comments very much.
But he did practice. That was the weird thing. And so Aiyuk is in a similar situation where both teams are saying, okay, like, we haven't been fining you. You've been doing this hold-in, which we've allowed. But, Brandon, I believe in you. I believe this will get done. It's why I drafted you in the 4th round of my fantasy draft. Like, people are too afraid of this contract. He'll show up. He's still a great player. A couple other items just in transactions before we take a quick break. I mentioned Dalvin Cook, who was advertised as a big deal, marquee signing, and then he went to the practice squad for the Cowboys. Let's calm down there. The Commanders signed Noah Brown. There was a lot of practice squad shuffling. Nothing to me that was that crazy, but Taylor Heineke got traded to the Chargers. We really
figured he was going to get dealt.
Campaigning for the Chargers to get a backup, and so that's an upgrade for them. Tyler Huntley is on the loose. The Browns cut him after not getting a trade partner for him, so he'll probably end up somewhere else that could use a quarterback too. Let's take a quick break, and then let's just have a clean start of our NFC preview. We're going to go through. We're going to tell you who makes the playoffs, who doesn't, who's going to be a little surprising, who's going to get fired.
Who's going to ruin our prime times?
Now we have to do that one too, yes.
For years, California's most beloved football franchise has been left wanting in the playoffs, lacking protection at key moments while opponents glibly celebrate world championships.
You're gonna have to deal with the
That's why we introduce Prop 71. California Prop 71 diverts key funds to the protection of Brock Purdy, resulting in a binding agreement with an institution bound for Canton, Ohio, for the rest of his career, paid for by the collection of rational humans who believe Trent Williams should be properly compensated.
Yes.
That is
That's
fantastic.
unbelievable.
Oh my God.
It's an election year. It's an important issue, and I think 49ers fans and Brock Purdy are going to be in big support of that prop.
Make
So
sure you read that fine print on those props.
Yes.
How they are in California.
and yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, they're not always the best written props.
No.
I suggest anyone, check us out on YouTube, the NFL Daily, so you can see everything that went along with that. Thank you to Patrick Claybon and his campaign to protect Brock Purdy. Maybe there'll be an answer early on. I'm going to start with this: a team favored to make the playoffs that won't, to see if anyone actually would go as big as the 49ers. I do want to say who are the teams that are favored to make the playoffs in Vegas. So the 49ers are the team most likely to, according to the Desert. The Lions, the Eagles, the Packers, the Cowboys, and the Falcons. Those are a pretty strong 6 who are favored to make the playoffs. The Rams and the Bears were next. They were kind of even odds as the 7th team. A little surprised the Bears were in there. We're going to go around the room. Everyone's going to pick one of those teams that you do not think make the playoffs. Steve, you look like you want to jump in.
I'm going to go with the Cowboys.
Okay.
I mean, as crazy as it sounds, here's a team that routinely wins 12 games. It only takes 9 to get in. Will they make that 6-game swing? They could. I mean, I know they got CD back. Their offense is going to get better. Their young offensive line looks good. Dalvin Cook, I mean, is he your answer in the ground game?
No.
Him
I
and
mean,
Zeke?
is he going to be better than Rico Dowdle? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like what they have in the run game. I know Mike Zimmer is a great defensive coordinator. I don't know. When I look at the team, when we say favored, I mean, that's the thing. I personally think they are a playoff team. But when you look at the teams that is favored,
Well, then they
but
should
I mean,
be your answer.
when you
you got to eliminate someone.
Well, okay, you know what? I'm just going to say the Cowboys. I'm going to say the Cowboys. Here's where I hedge, because I just don't know if there's a division that's going to give us 3 teams like we're going to see in the AFC North again. We're going to see 3 teams. Like I just don't know if there's that division.
I think the NFC West or the NFC
The
North
NFC West could.
I had the
yes.
Cowboys written down too. I think they're thin at a lot of positions where one injury really hurts them, but
Correct.
Their linebackers, the offensive line going from what was a strength to a weakness, the depth of the wide receiver group. I don't know if this is going to be a good defense in Dallas.
Yeah, I have the Cowboys written down.
Okay.
And I really think part of it is because the specter of what could possibly become of this team is just waiting right around the corner. It feels like, the coach on the final deal, the Dak situation. Here's a hypothetical. If you're Jerry Jones, and they know more about this situation internally than we know publicly clearly, right? But here's just the hypothetical. Play this string out with me a little bit. If you are clear, or if internally you are aware that your franchise quarterback potentially is not going to sign a deal with you, or you're not going to pay this guy, you already know you're not going to pay him what he's asking, then you're collecting calls, trying to see if you can recoup anything from the loss of what this player will be before November, and you're not re-signing your head coach, and you're not re-signing several players, and you have a core receiver who can help a different quarterback develop into that roster. This is a hypothetical situation, but I think if I'm Jerry Jones and I'm, talking to, our guy Clarence Hill about what a great GM he is, and nobody, you're obviously thinking about, if this guy leaves, what can I recoup instead of just coming away with nothing and just having to rebuild with no resources on the backside. And if I'm Dak, I do want to go and actually test free agency and actually get paid what I think I'm worth and what I think he will be worth.
Well, you mentioned those Jerry Jones quotes, and he was talking about Dak Prescott this week. Let's listen to what Dak Prescott said on Thursday, courtesy of KDFW Fox 4 in Dallas.
Yeah, I understand that. That's the business and the nature of this game that we play. I stopped, honestly, listening to things that he says to the media a long time ago. So it doesn't really hold weight with me.
I mean, it's funny.
I know there were some chuckles, but there was some biting in there.
When he says he's talking about his boss, Jerry Jones. Wait, was it a clean sweep? Did you write down the Cowboys too?
I did not.
Okay. We'll stop burying the Cowboys for a second, but I'm with you. I don't know if I can get there on that they could ever trade Dak in season. That they would have to really start slow for that to happen.
If you're already committed that you're blowing up your team after this season, then you are.
But they're gonna want to try to make it work this year. They're a live in the moment type of franchise. But you're right. Just a coach who won't be back, a quarterback that won't be back. Those are bad signs. Let's hear from you, Keegan, in terms of the team you wrote down.
All right, so the smart take, I think, would be the Falcons, just because I think that people are just putting them in by default, and there's still a lot of questions about that offense. Their defense is not going to be as good after losing Ryan Nielsen. But I'm going to start out with a boom, I'm going Eagles.
Ooh.
And I noticed that I was the only
like that.
one in the staff
This is how we get the
picks.
Cowboys fans back.
Exactly. I was the
Listening to
only
the
one in
show.
the staff picks I noticed that had them missing out of 30 people.
Wow.
So let me go through a little bit.
And by the way, clever that your last name is the first in every list, so you get more pop than all the other analysts.
Shout out to the Lebanese
I see what you're doing.
family. Anyway, so basically, I think Kelsey being the loss of Kelsey, everyone talks about it, but I do think that's going to be a huge loss, especially with the new coordinator. Will be the first time that Jalen Hurts ever calls protections in his life, if that's up to him. If not, it's Cam Jurgens, who it would be his first time playing center as a NFL pro, because last year when Kelsey missed a game, I think they kept him at right guard or left guard for continuity. From an offensive perspective, I think the book might be out a little bit on Jalen Hurts. You blitz him. Someone said that in Mike Sando's tiers. It was an anonymous coach that said you just cover zero, blitz him. They have supreme talent. Don't get me wrong. They have Saquon Barkley that's going to add explosion, but I don't think that just automatically assuming this offensive problems are going to be fixed that we saw over the second half of last season. And then on the other side of the ball, one of the worst defenses in the league last year. They invest in the secondary, have 2 great picks by most people's metrics in the draft, but you're expecting a lot out of rookies.
Mm-hmm.
You have 2 aging cornerbacks outside of that. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's a big improvement for their slot defense, especially, and that's where they really struggled last year. I think they allowed the most yards to slot receivers last year. But you have Fletcher Cox retiring. You have Bryce Huff, who's going to be a full-time player for the first time in his career. And you have really no depth beyond Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, who are not
That's
really
an issue.
full-time players. Like Jordan Davis has never really eclipsed 60% snap share in his career. So I don't know. I just think it's a lot more of a fragile team than people are saying. And, if the heat's hot, I could also see Sirianni, getting canned early.
Yeah.
That's a great, real quick, talking about the D-tackle lack of depth there. That's an issue because behind him, you don't have great linebackers.
Yeah.
I mean, Nakobe Dean is a hell of a talent, but that guy, when you look at him in person, you would think that maybe he's a slot corner. Like he's about as big as Kenny Moore.
And he's not. I don't think he's going to start either, which is also a problem. I mean, I think he's coming off the bench. You're right that I think they're a little more fragile. I'm high on them because I like the talent, but
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of
offensively, they're
teams like
loaded.
this, and they're similar to Dallas, where just if things start going poorly, it's going to really test that coaching staff and the structure. And we know that the front office were kind of the ones pushing these coordinators, and you have some guys there that are just ready to elevate, and the vibes weren't great with Hurts. I'm hoping that they really integrate him into the running game and that they provide some answers that maybe Sirianni didn't as a coordinator. I'll go with Falcons, by the way, anyways, just because I didn't have them in my playoffs, so I might as well. I just think there's a lot of projection there with the defense, assuming that it's going to be a lot better. And a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins, who is always an inconsistent player to me, coming off an Achilles tear, I'm just not convinced that he's going to be a plus-plus quarterback. And if he's an average quarterback, we'll see. All right, let's go to positive news. I feel like we've been so down so far. How about a team that's not favored to make the playoffs that will? Let's start with you, Jourdan.
I have the Seahawks here.
Okay.
I think the NFC West is going to be spicier than maybe people are looking at first glance, just because of how dismal the Cardinals were for much of last year. We've already talked ad nauseum about how they turned it on offensively in the back half. I think the Seahawks are gonna take a second to get their defense figured out under this new scheme, the language of the new scheme. Although Mike McDonald, his teaching tools, his teaching progression, you hear people rave about it inside coaching circles across the league, and everybody he's worked with just raves about how year one you can start to see it come together. Year two is when you really start to see this thing take off and players understand where they're supposed to be. I think that this offense is going to be really fun. I think that
agree.
the combination of Ryan Grubb, who was doing a lot of things that marry very well in NFL world, less so even in a collegiate world, because he's not necessarily exploiting the different hash marks in college. Instead, he's using his motions and shifts as it would adhere to an NFL field, and he's changing formations. All of his top receivers, which, by the way, the Seahawks have 3 very good receivers. All of those guys, the concept, like the concepts, you can see like the philosophy behind what they might try to do. And they also brought a former Rams pass game coordinator, Jake Peetz, up to Ryan Grubb's staff to talk about the little intricacies like spacing, like how to spring people out of different concepts and give them space in the second and third levels of the field out of those cut splits by moving like 1 inch to the left.
Let's go.
And I think that that's something that's really, really significant. If this offensive line can block anybody this year, which is always a question with this team, I do think that this is going to be a really fun year to watch for the Seahawks. I think they're going to be frisky, really, really tough out, especially down the back half. And Geno Smith's a great quarterback.
There it is, Greg.
There it is.
Are you good?
You said it all for me. They're my pick too. I think the coaching is so key, and we're taking a leap of faith, certainly on both sides of the ball, but especially on offense, where you need Grubb and their scheme to make the offensive line passable. It doesn't need to be great, but it needs to be not league worst. Like PFF ranked just pure offensive line talent, and they had him 32nd, and that's a problem. And they played like that last year, and it's why Geno Smith struggled so much on third down and in long distance situations, because otherwise, I think they're going to be a very difficult team to prepare for. I do think new coaching staffs sometimes have an advantage that way. I think it's just such a great division. But yeah, if you look at just the players, just like think of players and coaches that could win awards or like make a Pro Bowl team on that team. Yeah. Witherspoon. I think Reek Woolen can be a Pro Bowler.
Yep.
Byron Murphy, I think, can be like a defensive rookie of the year. DK, Gino, Ken Walker. It's like they have guys, and I think the defensive line is actually a lot of fun.
Yes.
I know it's not superstars, but once Nuosa's back, and it sounds like he's not going to be out long, you got him, you got Leonard Williams, you got Draymond Jones. Like, you have a lot to work with there. And, I'm going with them to win the division. I don't give, let's go.
I am, I've been high on Seattle the whole time. I'm like, why aren't we talking about the Seattle Seahawks? Because you look at McDonald, where he's coming from. You talked about all that front seven talent that they have on defense. That's where Baltimore, where he came from, makes its money. And now he's got a stud. I've talked to people up there. I mean, what they're going to do with Devin Witherspoon is very similar from the corner what the Ravens did with Kyle Hamilton at the safety spot.
Mm-hmm.
Look, this guy's going to be in contention for Defensive Player of the Year.
Woo.
Yeah, I'm calling that shot right now, and I'm with you offensively. Gino's going to be fine. If this offensive line can do anything in that run game, which they got 2 stud running backs, telling you, man, Seattle's going to be a pain.
Did you put him in the playoffs, Keegan?
I did.
Oh,
Good,
man.
smart
I don't
man.
like
It's
all
kinda
this
boring.
agreement. I don't want to be,
Well, we did this. We planned this on purpose so you'd have to pick against them.
No, I will not
Thought of
pick
this.
against them. I mean, we got our picks out there. It's online. All right, give me a team. Do you have another one that's not
I
favorite
would
of the playoffs?
say the Cardinals are going to be interesting.
Yep.
I think I'm
To
really,
make the playoffs?
not to make the playoffs, but I
Okay.
think they'll be competitive and maybe in the wild card race. I'm worried
Okay.
about their defense. That's really my only what's holding me back. But I mean, a full year of Kyler with Drew Petzing as the coordinator. You got Marvin Harrison. You got Trey McBride. Like, I'm excited for
Paris
seeing where that
Johnson,
offense
tackle.
goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Harris
talk best
Johnson,
division
love
race
that.
then, because my answer is NFC West. And to me, this is just from a dorky matchup perspective. It's the coaches, it's the players. Every one of these matchups is compelling to me because also it's one of the few divisions where there's 4 good quarterbacks, 4 really good quarterbacks. So that helps a lot. It's always going to make it more watchable. So I'm going around the room for best division race, but to me, these are all blockbuster box office because to me, even if the Cardinals don't win a ton of games, I'm not as high on you like them taking a big step in the win column. Like, they're going to be fun to watch.
I think that the history is getting really juicy between all of the coaches in this division versus just 2 of them.
Yeah.
I think that this is going to be really, really interesting. Some of the game planning. They're starting, finally, it's always been sort of Sean and Kyle, but then not even really Sean and Kyle in hiring off of each other's staffs. They're starting to hire off of each other's staffs a little bit, which you only saw that a couple years removed out of any one Kyle staff or Sean staff. It would be Rams 49ers. Now you're starting to see them sort of pluck each other's staff a little bit, start sort of trying to get each other's ideas in the building. I think just on a coaching level, I mean, quarterbacks.
It's a little
absolutely-
incestuous what's going on.
I
I
think
even
it's-
noticed how
She's talking about the second edition of her
playmakers
like
too.
podcast.
Coming in 2026.
It's personal. The four. I liked how the Rams, claimed the 49ers running back / return guy. It's like, I see what you're
You saw it when
doing there.
Seahawks preseason game. Use a couple of the run concepts, man. Go back and watch some 2023 Rams film. It's very, very interesting.
Anyone, I feel like the Rams are a team a lot of people steal from. Same thing with the 49ers, like around the whole league, not even just.
Well, it's because all the
this
coaches
division.
are everywhere.
Yeah.
They're running kind of the same stuff.
Anyone have a different division?
I
as,
do.
Like the best race.
I do. When you talk about the most competitive, and it's because it's mediocrity. It's the NFC South.
Okay.
You've got 3. Look. You've got 3 defensive coaches, right? You have 3 defensive coaches down. It's probably the only division in the NFL where you have 3 defensive head coaches. You've got the one offensive head coach is hot stuff going to Carolina, where they're going to be better. I mean, they're not going to be a 2-win team. They're going to be better. I just think it's going to be like it's been. 8 and 9 might be the best you get. So when you talk about the best overall race, I think it's going to be those 4 teams kind of stumbling over each other.
But that's just ugly football. I don't.
I love
that's-
it.
It might be
I love pain.
competitive.
That
I
wasn't
don't
the
wanna-
question, man. That
Yeah.
was not the
It's
question.
true, and I like
Well,
a good
it
ugly
was the
division.
Best division race, right? Not the most competitive.
Well,
Did I misinterpret that?
no, I think there's room for interpretation however you want it. Like,
Right.
I am totally down with like a season when the Panthers, when they were like 4-10 with Ron Rivera, and then they won 3 straight to make the playoffs or something like that. It's like I'm fine with some ugly. Give me mess. I'm with you. I like it.
I got NFC North.
Okay.
I like that. I almost went
because
there.
I honestly think that the Packers and the Lions might be the 2 best teams in the conference this year.
Wow.
That at the top.
Like that.
And I also think I'm really high on the Bears this year. I mean, I think over the second half of last season, after they traded Montez Sweat, arguably a top 5 defense, they retained
Top run
everyone.
defense in the NFL.
Yeah. sick run defense. Eberflus, he figured it out near the end. And I think from an offensive perspective, you get Odunze, you get Keenan Allen as the third wide receiver. That's a great place for him to be in this part in his career. And I think Caleb is really set up to hit the ground running.
You have all these
Oh,
stats,
that-
Keegan, in front of you, these crazy next-gen stats. Like, when are you going to break them out, you know? You're like pulling from all this crazy information. I want this version of next-gen stats. Can I have it?
this version?
I can get it?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can get it. You work for the
This is
NFL.
good. I can get it.
Yeah.
I'm excited. All right, let's go. You mentioned you think the Lions and Packers might be the best teams in the NFC. Should we go number 1 seed? I'll throw out mine. I'm going to go Lions. I just think the NFC is so much weaker than the AFC
It is.
overall. Like, there's a lot of good teams, but I obviously think the 49ers are coming back to the pack if I have the Seahawks winning the division. And the Lions are the team. It sounds so crazy to say that I just trust the most. That if you told me they had a losing record more than any team in the NFC, it would surprise me. So ultimately, I'm just going to put my faith in continuity in this system being really ready to go both sides of the ball, really like the Lions on both sides of the ball. I'm going to go Lions 1 seed.
I picked that as well. I hate that we've agreed on almost everything to this point, but I do agree with you. I also, if the Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk situation weren't unfolding, I would have picked the 49ers here. But I picked the Lions. Line play, quarterback has certainly raised the floor from several years ago. And they have their faith in him as a city, and as a team. Coordinator continuity, fixed some of the holes in their defense.
I mean, the secondary, they
got to-
addressed
I
it
love
so
that-
well.
I
Yes,
love
they
that their
did.
biggest problem this summer was like, oh, who's our third receiver? You know, like that's luxury now for the Lions. That's what we're asking. Like that's a good football team.
They brought in Tim Patrick,
Love that.
rather.
How about that?
And their practice squad, so that's just something to
That's a
watch.
guy who can dig out a safety or two. They're going to use him.
Yep.
Coming off some big injuries, but that would be great to see Tim Patrick in a big spot. They need Jameson Williams to come through, but I think they will. Why are you so high on him, Keegan?
On the Lions, I think the secondary, as you said, I think that's gonna allow Terrell Austin for the first time in his few years as a coordinator to lean more into man coverage, which I think he wants to play, and he's shown that over the course of the years. And they've just struggled to do that. I mean, when you had who was the guy? Who were their cornerbacks last year? I can't even.
They all got hurt. Emmanuel Mosley was in and out. He's
Yeah,
out now.
he's
Cam
out for
Sutton
the year.
was.
And real quick, Aaron
Trevor.
Glenn is the DC there. Terrell Austin's in Pittsburgh. Yep.
Anyone have a different number
I do.
1 seed?
I do.
All right.
Well,
Ooh.
we both do.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going with the Packers.
Okay. Wow.
I'm betting on second half of the year. Jordan Love. You want to talk about stats? He was second in EPA over the second half of the season. After starting, I think he had 1 or 2 games with above a 50% success rate in his first 8 games. Finishes the year 7 of his last 10 above that. He ends up top 5 in that metric in terms of consistency, because that's what was lacking over the first. You saw the flashes over the first 8 weeks, but the consistency, the getting rid of the ball quickly, trusting the short game and trusting his receivers. I think all of his receivers are so young. I mean, that was one of the youngest receiving cores last year. Hopefully they all take a step up. I love Jaden Reed this year in terms of his dynamic abilities. That tight end room, I mean, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave is awesome. Always have one of the best offensive lines. And now, you get Josh Jacobs, probably a little out of lateral move from Aaron Jones, but
It's
he might
fun.
stay in the field more. The defense, I'm a little bit more worried about, but I trust that offense to be among, a top 3 unit in the league, and I'm going to ride them.
Man, they would be
Once-
feeling like
They're-
they're just so back if they're a
Hey,
1 seed
can you
with this
imagine?
age. It's just crazy. Randy's going crazy back there. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going off the grid
Okay.
with my number 1 seed. And I know you talked about you didn't love him. I think the Eagles are going to be the number 1
Thought about him. Yeah.
because they play in a division where I think they honestly could be the only team from their division to get into the playoffs. Right? The other 2 teams could each have 2. Even if you go to the South, you could say Atlanta and Tampa. You talked about Green Bay in Detroit in the North, and in the West, you could have your choices of Seattle, the Niners, and the Rams. So that's why I think the Eagles are going to have an easier opportunity to become the number 1 seed if some of those injuries in those key spots, they can't be weak up the middle on defense. And right now, that's a soft spot potentially.
They are thinner than they've been. They used to have the big rotations, and they have a coordinator now in Vic Fangio who doesn't really rotate as much. So it's a different philosophy than Howie Roseman had. You mentioned it. Can those guys? Can the edge guys be good enough? Otherwise, though, I think you're onto something that the schedule, I think, is overall going to be pretty favorable, especially if we're projecting the Cowboys to be worse, then it's suddenly the easiest division in the league. You get the Carolina Panthers and the entire NFC South out of division. I don't hate that at all. Some of the out of division games, like just because of their schedule, like I'm in on the Eagles maybe being a 1 seed, but it could go in a million different directions. All right, last one before taking one last break here. Let's go first QB to be benched, if any.
I got one.
Please.
Derek Carr.
There it is. I knew it was
Fine.
coming.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's happened before. First of all, he's got the Saints. I think are over 90 million over the cap next year already. So,
Okay, I will push back on that. That's every year though. And
Every
it
year.
all they always make.
Yeah.
But they'll clean it up. I mean, this is the last
the
year.
easiest easiest
Yes.
move you can make. That's 60 million in terms of dead cap after this
Ugh.
season. I mean, but you're going to be paying him 50 million either way. So I think in general, also Carr, like having Kamara the whole year is going to play to his worst instincts. When Kamara was on the field last year, Carr got rid of the ball 0.3 seconds faster, which is an eternity over the course of a lot of dropbacks. He just is so much more willing to check the ball down when Kamara's there. Kamara's a little bit older. He's going to be check down Carr, and I think Dennis Allen eventually is going to try and pull the plug, and maybe
If he's there to pull the
if
plug.
he's there. to
I
pull
know.
the
I
plug.
feel like those two guys are kind of connected at the hip. But yeah, there's been more than a few people in the media. They're pushing hashtag the agenda, and that is Spencer
Rattler, baby.
He's
That's
not a normal 5th round pick.
It
And
is- it's
shout out
so
to
loud.
the Saints Block Party podcast for starting this. But the agenda is strong if Carr struggles. That is not a popular quarterback.
Yeah,
in
and
New Orleans.
play the string out. If another coach comes in, of course he is going to play Spencer Rattler. Like you're going to get the breath of fresh air if another coach or an interim coach comes in. Of course you are going to do that.
I put him third on my list. Actually, I had Daniel Jones as the most likely.
I said Daniel Jones most likely, but usually when you pull your quarterback, you've got a succession plan.
Tommy
and,
Cutler
and
is not
and,
one.
and Drew Lock is not your.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but, it's like it's kind of sad that I actually completely forgot about Daniel Jones.
yeah,
Like,
that's
I have Derek Carr on my list. I wouldn't disagree with Daniel Jones. I still think it's Derek Carr, but I got to say, like, it's, I don't know. We heard whispers, or Daniel Jeremiah heard whispers even around draft time that Drew Lock might play some games for the Giants.
Yeah, I think they signed
Yeah.
Drew Lock with the idea of playing him at some point. I don't think they were encouraged by him, and then he got hurt a little bit, although he should be back soon in the preseason.
He's a talented dude. I mean, my whole thing though is just after seeing the Hard Knocks, this is like it is all about Daniel Jones or we're all out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they have hitched their wagon to him, and if he makes it, whew,
If they're 1 and
Yeah.
7 though, and that contract is not guaranteed for injury, they just
they're all gone.
They might make a business.
Everybody's
That's a good
gone.
point.
Steve brings up a good point, though. I mean, that's like the emotional attachment to it. If you've made your cards that clear that this has to work no matter what, then yeah, you're going to stick with that guy a little bit longer. And they already have stuck with him.
I
a
think
little bit
Kirk
longer.
is more likely than Derek Carr to get benched
Nope.
early.
nope, not unless it's an injury.
I think if something went south there, I think they're just gonna love Michael Penix, and if they're losing, which
They love
which
him.
is a
They love him now.
possible scenario, I don't really expect it, but if they're losing, I could see them going to Penix. It would be crazy. I
Nope.
don't.
The head coach has got too much grace period down there. They're not gonna
Okay.
make that move right.
Speaking of head coaches with grace period, I get this one's too obvious. If in negative, first coach, if any, to get fired, Dennis Allen, I think would be
Yep.
be the favorite there. Stable, maybe if things went really south. Let's zoom past that. Well, let's take one more break, and then we're going to come back, and we will be wrapping up the show, getting all of our playoff seeds. You will learn who wins the NFC Championship.
Glad to be with all of you today. There's been a lot of talk about the road we've traveled and road ahead for America's team. Let me ask you all one question. If all we do is choke and lose, then who is the one truly living in the past? If we are the bandwagon, then shouldn't it be more fun? If you want fun, ask yourself this. Why not now? What would be more Dallas than a season born of contract disputes resulting in the ultimate goal before it all falls apart? They want audacity? What about the audacity of cope?
That is the campaign for the Dallas Cowboys, and I like it. Patrick Claybon putting himself. That's a smart take corner right now. Is actually to be big in on the Cowboys because no one is, and they still have Dak Prescott as their quarterback and a whole lot of talent, and they have had a history of winning through the drama over the years.
I just thought that was a Richard Nixon AI voiceover.
That was
Very well done.
I'm almost
what a
annoyed
talent.
that Patrick Claybon has won today's show MVP without
killed
even
it.
having to show up for work. He just
Crushed it. Well done, Pat.
sent
This
in
is
a
going to
couple.
live in your head.
No,
That-
it's a great thing. I love that Patrick is such a huge part of the show, and he's going to be with me on our preview show each and every week, starting next week. So I'm really excited about that and getting him back in here. All right, let's throw out a team that you just don't know what the hell to do with. That I'm going to throw out the Saints because I was there at their camp, and I think people who are around that team see a scenario where it goes really bad, and they have a top 3 or top 5 pick, and yet, like you look beneath the hood. I don't know what the next gen stats say, but for instance, like the Football Outsiders number, their projected wins. You look at the players they brought in, how consistent Dennis Allen's defense has been, how it's a pretty loaded defense,
Yes.
and like their win projection over at FTN is, I think, winning the division. Like they're over 9, and I can kind of see it because the whole point of this franchise, year after year, is to keep Mickey Loomis employed. That to me is everything is
Come on.
geared towards getting to that 9th win, getting to that 10th win, just keeping the party going that Sean Payton started. And I can kind of see it. Like, it's a bad division, and so I don't know what to do with them. They could be 3 wins. They could be 9 or 10 wins. That was the team that came to mind for me.
They fall below that line for me just because we can see very clearly, even outside looking in, what should have been done with this team, what continues to should be done with this team. This is the time to capitalize and punish the rest of the NFC South. Last year was the time.
It would
to
basically
punish
be their
the NFC
defense
South.
being the road for them. To me, is their defense being a top 3 to 5 defense. I think it's
They've
possible.
been a top 5 to 8 for like 7 years.
And they're great. And let me not discount that because they are. I've said that before on this show. That's a badass defense.
Yes, it is.
However, that can be a little bit of a Firefly situation, just to continue to kick the can, continue to just, okay, well, we've got this going for us. Awesome. That's great. But also, again, if you're looking at the division itself for the last 2-3 years, especially as the Carolina Panthers continue to struggle the way that they have
Sure.
and be kind of like dipped in chaos every year, this and last year and the year before that, this has been the time to punish the rest of the division, to really make those sort of really strong moves and those really like aggressive moves that show either you're ripping it up and starting over, or you're making a push over different personnel, or you're getting the up and coming young bright head coach or whatever. These last
How about
3
just running
years
it back to try to get to 9 wins?
has been the time.
Let's
That's
do
been
that.
the time.
So that's what I mean, though. If they do it, they'll all stay employed again. Anyone have a different team you don't know what the hell to do with?
Oh, the Vikings.
Oh yeah, that's a
Nice.
good
I
one.
mean, the
Fun
Minnesota
fact.
Vikings, I think they're a talented football team. They've
They
got
are.
a very good offensive line, 2 very good tackles, the best wide receiver in the NFL, great young wide receiver in Jourdan Addison. TJ Hawkinson is coming back at some point. They've got Aaron Jones at running back. I mean, if Sam Darnold can play 17 games at a halfway decent level, like they've got some players on defense now. Those safeties, that tandem of Harrison Smith and Bynum.
I think it's the best division in football. I don't
Yeah.
think it's the best race because I do think the Lions and Packers are ahead, but I think it's the best division.
Yeah, I mean the Vikings and their coaching. I mean, we can
Flores
sit here and say
also.
whatever. I mean, Brian Flores is damn good, and Kevin O'Connell. Hey man, he showed me last year that he is nobody to mess with as a hell of a head coach.
I think Kevin O'Connell is a coach of the year front runner.
Yeah,
Frankly. I
he's
think that,
skilled.
especially if he can coax some things, make polenta with Sam Darnold, like I said on a previous.
you got to
show.
win like 10 games though. He's been a candidate every year he's coached.
He was freaking close last
I
year.
didn't say
with
candidate.
9
I said front
quarterbacks.
runner.
Yeah,
I did not say
Okay,
candidate.
so do
I
you
said
have them in
front
the
runner.
playoffs?
I don't have them.
Oh,
I don't have them in the playoffs.
Well, he's not winning Coach of the Year.
But I think that like every year there's been people that have just been close and just missed it that should have deserved it, and then teams that won maybe more games and other. We're not going to get into this argument right now, but I have takes on that once we do get to it. But I do have the Eagles
Okay.
as a team that I don't know what to do with. That I am not discounting their talent. They have so much talent on the offensive side. I do have a big question about the center situation. I question the secondary less now that they've sort of overhauled that position. Some of that young talent coming up, I do not question it as much as I probably would have had they made different decisions or not brought in a new coordinator and not had the DBs assistant coaches that Vic Fangio then brought with him. However, I think that the weird thing about the Eagles for me, or the thing that I can't quite square, is like we've seen their ceiling, right? But I think their floor can be potentially a lot lower than some of these other teams that are maybe in the middle of this division.
They showed it last year when they were one of the very worst teams in the NFL.
That's why I
over
don't know
a
what to do with
6-week
them.
period, which is a crazy thing to envision. Sheil Kapadia, who does a great job over the Ringer at the Ringer and lives in Philly, said he feels like he always has a good read on what the Eagles are going to be like going into the year, and he says he can't remember a year where he has less of a feel, which I think gets to what you're saying, and that the people there even are just like, it makes sense, but we're not really sure how this is going to go. Do you have a different team?
I have the Cowboys.
Okay.
Staying in division.
Good point.
First of all, the defensive philosophy change and how the personnel fits within that. You go from one of the most single high safety teams in terms of their coverages,
press man corner,
to Mike Zimmer, who was the only guy back way before all these teams started, moving towards more split safety coverages. He was the only team from 2018 to 2021 to play split safety coverages on a majority of drop. Through the preseason, showed a similar thing. You normally see teams play a lot more vanilla coverages. He's still doing it on over half of his dropbacks. They actually played, I think, more cover 6 or almost as much cover 6 in the preseason in 3 games as Dan Quinn did in 3 total seasons as a coordinator.
And they lost their best DB.
And that's always a problem when you bring in a new coordinator to do the pieces still fit.
And they also lost all of their pass rush depth. I mean, they were the best pass rush by pressure rate we've seen in the last 5 years last year, and only beating themselves the year before. They lose Dorrance Armstrong. They lose Dante Fowler, and Sam Williams goes out with a ACL tear. I think they lost all of their pass rush depth, but they still have Micah Parsons. And what the hell is Mike Zimmer going to do with Micah Parsons? Is he going to line him up over the A-gap and do a bunch of double mug fronts? Is he going to move him around, or is he just say, pin your ears back, we need you to get pressure because we have no other way to get pressure now that we lost all those ancillary pieces? Also, what the hell are they going to do? Who's playing linebacker for that team?
I think Micah Parsons might be a little bit, not all the time.
He'll move him. He'll move him around. He'll be a chess piece.
More than he's been. I like that pick. Quickly, let's just do a speed round of this one. Biggest win increase in the conference. This one was tough because I just had a hard time going against Chalk when I looked at the wins from a year ago. This was a tough one. I'm just going to throw out a couple. Even though I'm down on the Falcons, I don't think it'll be the Falcons. They won 7 games last year. They have a chance. I think the Panthers have a pretty good chance. They only won 2 games last year. I just think I've always said it's really hard not to win 5 games in the NFL. Coaches are always like, it's the hardest thing to do in the NFL or in all of sports is to win a game in the NFL. Nope, it's the exact same as every other sport. It's 50% of the teams win. It's exactly the same. And usually you win 5, and it's a bad division. So they could get to 5, which that's a 3-win increase
+3
right there. The Commanders, I think, have a chance. We haven't mentioned them all day, and yet I just believe enough in the Dan Quinn juju and culture and energy and Jaden Daniels. Even though I don't think that team is very good, they strike me as a team that's not going to be good. And their analytics profile says they should be a 3-14 team, but they end up winning a bunch of close games and win 6, which that would be an increase. So they got a chance. Those are some teams.
So you're going +3.
I just said I'm going speed round and then went on a long rant about it. So that really sums up NFL Daily.
I don't have a comment on that. But I say Carolina because bless their hearts, first of all. And then second of all, I think I absolutely see them winning at least 3 more games. Hell, make it 4 more games.
Okay. That would do it.
I'm going Cardinals. They were a 4-win team last year. I think they could easily get
Good call. Good call.
I'm going Arizona and Washington +4.
I worry about the Arizona defensive talent, and they've had a lot of injuries.
Good coach.
I get too spooked by August.
Coach.
August really changes me. I'd be higher on the Rams right now if they haven't had such a strange one. Maybe we'll get into that with the playoff seeds, because I'm sure one of us at least has the Rams. We haven't mentioned them at all. Let's all go through our playoff seeds in order. Well, let's go one at a time.
Or reverse order.
Reverse order, and we'll each say ours and say our NFC championship. We'll have a quick discussion about each of ours, and then we'll each take a turn. So why don't we start with Keegan?
I'll start with the Seahawks as a 7 seed.
Okay.
A lot of the things you guys said earlier in terms of, I mean, I think Witherspoon's going to be awesome in this defense, and Geno in that offense. I'm really bullish on that. The Bears as my 6 seed.
Nice.
I do think Caleb has a very high level rookie year. I mean, maybe not CJ Stroud because that was historic, but like he shows us why he was considered a generational prospect. Lions at the 5 seed just miss it out. They still might have the second best record in this.
That's tough. Three teams in the same division in the playoffs, but it's possible.
Doesn't really make that much sense, but just in terms of like team ratings and how I'm rating them, I think the Lions might be the second best.
They could all roll out of division, and that's how it happens. And we've seen it before.
Buccaneers at 4th. I just don't know what to do with the NFC West and South. I defer to who won last year, and I don't think they got that much worse. I like Grant Barton a lot. Maybe the run game can be a little bit better this year. Cowboys at 3. Again, don't really know what the hell to do with them, but still trust in Dak and Micah Parsons enough and Mike Zimmer to kind of string together a division title in a very weak division. 49ers at 2. We haven't talked that much about them. I'm not picking them as the 1 seed for all the holdouts and stuff. I could be completely proven wrong. They could be a juggernaut again, but I also think that team is a little bit more fragile and has a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover. And the Packers at 1 is
love that. I like that Keegan was bold. No Rams in there, no Falcons in there. Some different teams like the Bears, and having the Packers 1. That's fun. And your NFC championship, we'll hold those actually. I'll go my list: 7 Packers, 6 Rams. If my daughter wasn't a fan, I don't know. Maybe I would be harder on them. A lot of talent. I mean. A lot of talent in terms of the coaching staff and Stafford. It's still hard to totally go against them. 5 49ers, 4 Bucks. I went with the Bucks as well. I think they're a good defense, a good enough offense, a lot of continuity like the coaching staff. 3 Seahawks winning that division, 2 Eagles, and number 1 Lions. What do you got, Jourdan?
Well, I'm just going to tell you who my playoff teams are: Lions, Niners, Rams, Packers, Falcons, Eagles, Seahawks.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of Seahawks love here. What do you got?
7 is Cowboys, 6 Seattle, 5 Green Bay, 4 Atlanta.
I like it.
3 Niners, 2 Lions, 1 Eagles.
Okay. So a lot of agreement, and I've been seeing online. It makes sense. I think it was hard. I'm glad you got the Bears in there. I feel like they should be represented. I do think that the Vikings have at least a better chance than people are giving, but I'm not ready to go there. There's really only 3 teams in this entire conference that I'm like, or 4 teams rather, that I feel like have almost no chance to make the playoffs. Just Washington, Giants. I think the Cardinals, you wouldn't throw them in there, and then the Panthers as well. So it's a fairly open conference. You want to go your NFC Championship game?
Get the Lions over the Niners.
Okay.
Yep. I think I think the Niners are going to be red hot halfway through the season when they get all these guys back, including Talanoa Hufanga, but just not enough. I think Detroit, it's their time.
I have Lions over Niners as well. And I think it's, you sort of see these like poetic arcs every once in a while in the league. You saw it a few years ago when the Rams beat the 49ers for the first time in 7 attempts to actually, advance to the Super Bowl. There's some poetry sometimes in this sport, and I think the Lions get theirs back.
Lions would be a whole lot more than poetry.
I'm with you.
God, that would be a history book.
It'd be beautiful. And usually I'm afraid of the team that improves so much from one season to the next. It's kind of hard to
but they've done it. They've been one of the few teams, Greg, that have done it successfully in steps. It has not been one seismic leap after one seismic.
You know who they remind me of more than anyone is Joe Shane, and when he was in Buffalo as the assistant GM and that Bills team, but they never really quite got over the hump. They just kind of stayed at that level. I also have the Lions winning the NFC. Man, I thought a lot of people would take the Packers this year.
I got them.
Okay,
Packers
you got the
over
Packers.
Lions.
Packers over the Lions. So we all 4 of us have the Lions in the NFC Championship. I had the Lions over the Eagles in mine. That is fun. We have, as we're taping, we have breaking news. I'm so glad this happened before we left the studio.
Lucky.
This is like, we always complain about it. This is like a sign. It's like Groundhog Day that we're going to have a great NFL season. Brandon Aiyuk is staying in San Francisco. No surprise there. The deal is done. 4 years worth $120 million. It's reportedly front-loaded, according to Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo. I don't even care about all the details. It's front-loaded. It's about $30 million a year. You can tell that number meant a lot to Aiyuk. I think it's the right average because it's a tick above. It's quite above the guys like Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, who signed earlier, who had 2 years left on their contract, and I would say we're just like a little tick below where Aiyuk is as a player, but it's not quite where Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb is. In fact, it's significantly short of that, and that's fine. Not everyone needs to make $33 million. 30 sounds about right for Brandon Aiyuk, and it's another reminder, Keegan, just sign him earlier in the process. I can guarantee you, if they had offered the Brandon Aiyuk about 29 with its front loaded 28, like the 49ers could have saved money if they had just done this a little earlier, but it's all happening in the end. And that's my wide receiver 3 on my fantasy team because everyone was too afraid of him in the draft. Have a long-term vision. That's what you need as a fantasy owner and as a GM, but everyone's happy here.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. He was just electric downfield last year, leading breakout year, led in a lot of our metrics. Very awesome to see that happen.
What metrics? Like the downfield throws, basically?
I think he had more yards. I'd have to double check this, but like more yards, over 10 air yards than almost any player in the league.
He became that guy. Brock Purdy wants to go down the field, almost to his detriment, I think, sometimes, but you like that out of a quarterback. You'd rather have them take that out of it. And yet, Debo's not really that guy. Juwan Jennings is not really that guy. George Kittle, you can scheme it up, but he's not really that guy in the same way. And Aiyuk is.
Exactly. He's actually in that intermediate area. NFL Pro, shout out. That was really quick. He had over 100 yards more than any other player in the intermediate area last year.
Yeah, it adds a dimension to their offense. Frankly, adds help for the quarterback. And I actually look at this from like microscopic and telescopic a little bit with this because the 49ers not only got this done, which should have been done way sooner than this. Our long national nightmare of hearing about this is over, thank God.
Jamar Chase, you're up next.
But I will say, on the other side of this, as the months and even the next year or so continues, all the teams that came out of the woodwork to show their own cards to the 49ers about what they would potentially do for a player of Brandon Aiyuk's caliber, they have all that information now. So let's say, and I think he will maximize this contract. He's a great player. I think he's a great receiver and deserves this payday. Let's say in a small chance or an alternate world that he doesn't. Well, or that they move on, or that we have to pay our quarterback, or that something happens down the road, and they now know what other teams are willing to do to get a player of that caliber, and those other teams know what he'll be paid. So I think this is like one of those win-win-wins. You do wish it happened earlier. This is also probably the best case scenario for Brock Purdy right now.
It's fine. In the end, like we get bothered by it because there's these ups, there's these downs.
Yeah, they're probably not bothered by it one bit.
I mean, the 49ers, I think, were.
I'm talking about the timing. Like,
yeah,
like
in
they're
the
not
end,
going to be relitigating the timing over this.
Maybe he's not fully up to speed week 1. He has a little bit slow of a start. They're not worried just about week 1. It's great. I do think Deebo Samuel is going to be the odd man out. Depends how this season goes, certainly. I just think it's going to be very difficult to keep paying everyone if Trent Williams is going to be around there for a long time. And Nick Bosa, I do think Deebo Samuel could be a guy that is on the trade market next offseason, but we'll see because Aiyuk, to me, has become that guy. And I think the reason they were so annoyed in part was because of how much Brandon Aiyuk means to them and means to their development. Kyle Shanahan was so hard on this kid. It was his hand-picked kid that he wanted. The perfect one for his offense out of Arizona State was a surprise pick. It was so hard on him, was in the doghouse, wouldn't play him, got on him, and then he slowly got better and better and better to the point where he developed into exactly what Kyle Shanahan imagined. And it took Aiyuk's credit that he improved so much as a route runner. And then right when it gets there, he wants to get out, and it's just like a lot of feelings. It's the ones that you love that hurt you the most, Jourdan.
Well, I love that Brandon Aiyuk did this, and if you're putting it in that context, because hey, he'll be hard on you right back. Then it's time to pay up, and all of that work and sweat equity that he did put in to become the exact perfect player for them, which probably came up in negotiations, by the way.
Well, of course.
Then absolutely, he's going to get what he is owed, and make him sweat a little bit, and perhaps that's where some of the annoyance leaks out a little bit. Okay, you're going to have to sweat for a second and then pay the player.
And by the way, I think Brandon Aiyuk was annoyed how the 49ers tend to play things through the media sometimes. And, that's not going to make your players happy. But in the end, the Steelers, if they had just given up more, probably could have had him. Browns, Patriots, didn't sound like he was going there in any scenario. Just wasn't interested in it. Fun show today. We did it. We predicted exactly what's going to happen in the NFC this season. Congratulations, Keegan.
Way to go.
Amazing performance. And I should have mentioned, Steve Wyche is no longer with us on this show, but he
Jesus.
is. Okay, sorry, I put that poorly. He's on the Insiders. You know, he's so popular.
He's on the inside.
We were so happy to have him.
Steve is fine.
He's totally fine. If you're watching on YouTube and he just disappeared, it's like that weird 3 men and a baby thing where it looks like there's a ghost. It's fine. He just left.
So now you're doing the verbal memes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's say goodbye, Randy. I'm really excited we have a nice little weekend here. But then we're coming back on Monday. I'm going to start looking ahead to week 1 with Ollie Connolly. That's going to be a fun show. We're not quite into our week 1 schedule, but we're close. We're just days away from the season starting. For Steve, for Jourdan, for Keegan, I'm Gregg Rosenthal. Football's back.